Someone asked a surgeon a question no stranger should ever be asked.
Okay, honestly, it was on the form. I was just being thorough, I swear.
I will never recover from this. Never, not ever, not as long as I live.
Inspired by the kind of story you'd find on Reddit, today's tale begins, as so many disasters do, in a hospital waiting room. A place of quiet suffering, low lighting, and apparently one catastrophically misplaced question.
Okay, so wait. I need everyone to know up front that I genuinely thought I was being helpful. Like, honestly, my intentions were completely good. I was just asking a simple question about her morning routine.
He asked a senior consultant surgeon whether she'd had a bowel movement that morning. A woman he had never met before in his life. I wanted to dissolve into the floor tiles.
Let us rewind. Sophie had been admitted to a hospital outpatient clinic for a minor procedure, nothing serious, but the kind of appointment that requires a bit of preparation the night before. Jake, being a devoted and entirely overconfident friend, had insisted on coming along for moral support.
And I'd done my research. I looked up what you're supposed to do before these procedures, like the prep stuff. Fasting, hydration, all of that. I even made her a whole checklist of her morning routine to follow.
He did, to be fair. He'd written out this dead detailed checklist: wake up at 7, skip breakfast, drink only water, no tea, no coffee. It was actually proper helpful, right up until the bit where it all went wrong.
The checklist had also included a note from the pre-admission paperwork, something about confirming certain, shall we say, digestive milestones before the procedure. Jake had taken this note very seriously.
It literally said on the form, and I quote, "Please confirm your bowel habit is normal before attending." A bowel habit, by the way, just means your regular digestive routine. Like how often things, move. Naturally. It's a medical daily routine thing.
It is a completely normal medical term. The problem was not the term, Jake.
Right. So we get to the waiting room, and Sophie's sitting there looking nervous, and I realize she never actually confirmed whether her bowel habit was normal that morning. Like, she hadn't ticked that off the checklist.
I absolutely had. I just hadn't told him because why would I? Who reports that to their friend? It's nought to do with him.
And here is where the story takes its turn. Sophie had stepped away briefly to freshen up, part of her usual morning routine, delayed by the early start. In her absence, a woman in a white coat entered the waiting room and sat down in the chair beside Jake.
She had a clipboard. She was writing something down. She looked, and I want to stress this, she looked exactly like a nurse doing admin rounds. Like someone who would absolutely need to know about a patient's morning routine and daily habits before a procedure.
She was a consultant surgeon. She just stepped out between operations. She was filling in her own personal planner.
I did not know that at the time. So I lean over very politely and I say, and I'm being professional here, I say, "Excuse me, I just need to check. Has she had a normal bowel movement this morning?" And I gestured toward the corridor where Sophie had gone.
The surgeon lowered her clipboard. She looked at Jake with the particular expression of a person who has seen many extraordinary things in a hospital and yet remains genuinely surprised.
I walked back in at that exact moment. I saw Jake leaning toward this woman I didn't recognize, completely earnest, waiting for an answer. The woman looked at me, then at Jake, then back at me, and I could feel it. I could feel the horror coming.
The woman goes, very calmly, "I'm sorry, I'm not part of the nursing team. I'm a surgeon, and I have absolutely no information about this lady's bowel habits." And then she stands up, tucks her clipboard under her arm, and walks away.
She nodded at me on the way past, a proper sympathetic nod, like she was sorry for my loss, the loss being my dignity.
Now, at this point, a sensible person might have gone quiet, reflected on the situation, perhaps stared meaningfully at the floor. Jake, however, felt the need to explain himself.
I tried to clarify. I called after her, not loud, just like politely. I said, "It was on the form, it's part of her prep routine." And the waiting room, which had been pretty quiet, went very, very still.
There were 6 other people in that waiting room. 6. They all heard it. One man lowered his magazine dead slowly and just stared at us. I've never wanted to reschedule a medical appointment so badly in my entire life.
Sophie sat down, Jake sat down. There was a silence between them that lasted, by all accounts, approximately 4 minutes. Long enough for Sophie to scroll through her phone, stare at the ceiling, and mentally compose a message to her GP asking if she could be transferred to a different hospital entirely.
To be fair, when the actual nurse came out and called Sophie's name, I tried to get up and ask her the same question, just to, complete the checklist, and Sophie grabbed my arm so fast.
I have never held anyone's arm so tightly in my life. I said through my teeth very quietly, "Do not ask anyone anything," and he nodded like a man who finally understood the gravity of what he'd done.
The procedure itself went smoothly. Sophie's morning routine had, for the record, been entirely normal and correctly followed. All boxes ticked, all habits accounted for. The checklist was technically a success.
See, the system worked. I stand by the checklist. The checklist was good. The execution had one small flaw.
One small flaw. He asked a surgeon about my bowel habit in a packed waiting room. That's not a small flaw, that's the whole plot.
Now before we go, and because this is English through stories, and we do actually teach things here, let's look back at some of the vocabulary that came up naturally in today's story. All of it connected to that very useful theme of daily routines.
Right, yeah. So a morning routine, that's just the set of things you do every morning in the same order. Wake up, wash your face, get dressed, that kind of thing. Sophie had a full morning routine written out for her procedure day. I made it.
He did make it, and it included fasting, which means not eating, usually for a set number of hours before something medical. You fast so your stomach is empty. Pretty standard pre-procedure prep.
And hydration. Staying hydrated means drinking enough water throughout the day, part of any healthy daily routine. The checklist said water only, no tea, no coffee. Sophie had to skip her usual morning brew, which she was not happy about.
Proper gutted about the coffee, honestly. That cup of tea in the morning is dead important to me. It's part of my routine. I wake up, I put the kettle on, that's just what I do, or what I usually do.
And a routine, of course, is simply a set of actions you do regularly, usually in the same order at the same time. We talk about a morning routine, a bedtime routine, a daily routine. Even a bowel habit, as Jake so memorably demonstrated, is a kind of routine, a word that refers to the regular pattern of someone's digestive health.
Okay, yes, bowel habit. Medical term, totally normal to ask about in a clinical context. Not so normal to ask a random surgeon in a waiting room. I see that now. I do.
Other words, we also had prep, short for preparation. The things you do to get ready for something, like the prep routine before a medical procedure. And we had checklist. That's a list of tasks you tick off one by one to make sure you haven't missed out.
A checklist is genuinely one of my favorite tools. Honestly, I use one every single morning. Wake up checklist, gym checklist, going to a hospital with a friend checklist, which I will now update to include the note. Do not interrogate surgical staff.
We also touched on a bedtime routine, the things you do before sleep, and schedule, which is your plan for the day, when things happen and in what order. Both are central to daily life, and it turns out, to navigating hospital appointments without causing a scene.
My schedule that day was, arrive at 9, check in, wait, have the procedure, go home. Simple. Nowhere in the schedule did it say, have Jake mortify me in front of 6 strangers and a consultant surgeon.
Next time I'll add it in, under optional activities.
And that is where we leave today's story. A hospital waiting room, an overprepared friend, a mistaken identity, and one question that will follow Sophie for the rest of her life.
If that made you laugh or cringe so hard you covered your face, go ahead and drop us a like. It genuinely means a lot.
And follow us so you never miss another story like this one. There's a new one every single day, and they just keep getting more chaotic.
Subscribe to English Through Stories, new episodes every day, and every one of them will teach you something useful, whether you want it to or not.
See you on the next one. Drop us a like.
Hit follow and never miss a story.
Subscribe to English Through Stories. Find us on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. See you on the next episode.